is the last part of the third DRAMSec workshop. And then we are a little bit behind the schedule, but let's just try to finish that on time, but maybe 5-10 minutes late. Europe is very late at night, so let's try to keep the pace. So the topic is about the security challenges in future memory technologies and confidential compute. And let me try to read the abstract, the great abstract Victor prepared. Hello, GPT. So it's artificial intelligence and machine learning techniques, technologies are rapidly pushing computer architectures and DRAM technology to their limits. So which exposes two very important requirements for future memory. How do we satisfy the request for high-bandwidth DRAM solutions without introducing new security vulnerability? And second, how do we prevent unauthorized access to machine learning models when they run in less trusted environment? We expect discussions on future memory technologies to focus on first, fundamental changes in memory organization, bringing features such as processing in memory, processing near memory to next generation devices, and second, confidential compute, which is greatly introduced by David right ago, focusing on features like memory end-to-end encryption and isolation and support for secure enclaves. So in this panel, we'll hear experts from both industry and academia on what to expect in the near future. What kind of new memory technologies do they envision, and how do we make sure they are secure? What type of attacks should we expect? How do we ensure secure operation, ensure safe operation, and how should we prioritize research on DRAM security? So, and next is basically about logistics. Each panelist has the opportunity to present their view on the panel topic for 5 minutes. Then I believe the session will drive kind of almost probably all autonomously. So let me invite the 5 excellent panelists. I mean, Dave from Intel, stage after his wonderful keynote speech. Dong-Kyun Kim from SK Hynix, Taek Kim TK from Samsung, Onur Mutlu from ETH Zurich, and Stefan Saroiu from Microsoft. Please check our website for their fantastic micrographs. So David, can you start? Our stop sharing.
So I'm not sure.
David,
I think David already prepared.
So then we can move on. Or if you want to have some sales pitch, David. It's really
I'll give somebody else a chance. So I have to go ahead.
Okay, then it's probably the Dong-Kyun will be the next.
So I will share my material.
Do you want to share the screen or?
Yeah, I want to share the screen.
Yep, take your time. Yep, great.
Can you see my material?
Yeah, I can see the screen, the second page. Yep.
Okay. It is my pleasure to discuss and talk with you. So today I prepare some general topics about the security and reliability of future memory systems. In general, I think memory system for near future, we can get a chance to progress some kind of new stuff of memory area. So with the CXL interface, CXL is one of the new interface of the computing systems to add some memory stuff. So one of the things is that the acceleration kind of stuff with the memory. And another thing is that just memory expander with the new time memory. So in this area, we can get a chance to move with the kind of CIEM, PIM, process near memory, process in memory, and computing memory. So for the AI machine learning kind of the processing. So this is new area, I think. And also, The CXL can make some opportunity to adopt it here, as I mentioned. So that is CIM, PIM, PNM, and SCM also. And also in this area, we can adopt the general the DRAM stuff, or like the DIM kind of stuff, or the mobile DRAM. And but the last picture perspective of server system, today's the memory controller, DDR controller have some kind of last picture for the guarantee the server level reliability. But the CXL kind of stuff, I think the CXL controller should have some kind of a similar capability last feature for guaranteeing the server level reliability. So in the CXL field, the controller, the last feature should move from the general memory controller to the CXL controller. So the stuff of media on the CXL kind of the stuff is could be different from current existing DRAM memory source system on the server. So the various and kind of the different movements can be occur in this area. So this is the the kind of the future discussion area I think we need. So in general, the server level last feature, I think many items on server currently to guarantee reliability of last capability on server. So this kind of generally currently exists on the memory controller to control the memory subsystem, especially the DRAM DIMM. But I think on the CXL kind of stuff should be implemented on the CXL controller, all this kind of stuff. So currently the important thing is the kind of SDDC, single device data correction capability should be implemented. Also the CXL controller, and also another important thing is the low solution is also implemented to the CXL controller. So all of items, I think, almost items should be implemented to the CXL controller with the different type, even though not only the memory, general memory media type, but also the different stuff of the memory media. So this is concept. So and also I'd like to introduce the kind of the synergy effect of the on-die ECC and system ECC. For example, DDR4 system, there is no on-die ECC scheme inside of DRAM. So just only the server system have only the server system ECC. But the DDR5 perspective, the DRAM in DRAM, the on-die ECC scheme is introduced. So the server system ECC plus on-die ECC could be implemented on this DDR5 system. So the synergy effect is that in the DDR4 systems, just only the system has only the system ECC with the kind of the symbol correction capability, like the Reed-Solomon kind of codes. But in the Reed-Solomon code perspective, the limitation is that the multi-device era, multi-position era perspective, it is limited the correction detection capability. So, for example, if the first strike of first device, the strike content is that kind of the symbolic error, like the word line port, then other device second strike, if the other device occurred the second strike, like the bit pair or bit line failure or subdomain port, in that case, that is not correctable, so it is uncorrectable. But in the DDR5 system, even though the post device strike by the symbolic error, but the bit9 port or bit port kind of second strike on the other device, then on DDR5 system, it is correctable error. So it's more improvements the reliability of the system. So the per device on the IC can solve per device port problem. It's up to the on the ICC code and the parity bin, number of parity bin, but currently the single bit failure can be solved for each device on the IC scheme. So
Dong-Kyun, can you wrap it up a little bit?
Okay, yeah. So and also the future device of DRAM perspective, the in DRAM ECC scheme, I can summarize this kind of the schemes. So now the DDR5 and LPDDR5 is adopted the 128-bit chunk. It is limited by the number of I/O of a device. So, but if we expand the number of I/O or some number of the burst lengths, then you can make some more larger chunk on the MCC bit. So in this case, you can get the new type of in-DRAM MCC scheme. So the RS code actually implemented also the HBM3, and also new type device. If we expand the I/O number of I/O, 16 one more, or the BL32, in this case we can get a code word size data over than 256 bits. So in this case, we can get a chance to improve the on-the-IC capability. So double bit adjacent double bit error can be correctable, and also the random 2-bit can be correctable. So it is up to the device situation. And also the Rohemmer perspective, we discussed already, but the two type Rohemmer scheme on the DRAM, the probability based Rohemmer mitigation scheme, and now we're discussing the deterministic Rohemmer mitigation. So both of them, people DRAM just do the by itself mitigated the Rohemmer detection, but it's not sufficient, I think. So we need to collaborate. We don't have any collaboration about the mitigation of Rohemmer detection between the DRAM and SoC. So now we need to collaboration kind of scheme. The DRAM can detect the exact count value of the activation row address. And also the system can issue the RFM to mitigate them. So DRAM can detect it, and SoC can mitigate it. So the RFM is now under discussing the proactive or post-active. It is kind of the big challenge things, I think. So we need to discuss today this kind of which one is the more efficient way to do some appropriate Rohemmer operations. So it's a limited time. So that's it, I think.
Okay, great. So thank you. So Tae, can you go next? Yeah, please. 5 minutes, up to 5 minutes. Quite strict this time.
Hi, this is PK. Do you hear me?
Yep, great. Go ahead.
So I have one short slide, and a lot of details are already covered by David and Dong-Kyun. So I would like to just hit my presentation very shortly and move on to the next. Then, if you see the one?
Maybe in a second. Yep.
Yeah, this is me. Just find me through LinkedIn. That summarizes all the things that you see in the screen. And this is the The one slide that I would like to briefly touch in a high level. So, in a long-term point of view, as a DRAM supplier, this is the items that Samsung as a Samsung. I just joined here as a Samsung. So I would like to highlight JEDEC is already working on the multi-layer protection. So the multi-layer protection is a call for action is requested 2 years ago when we had the very first DRAM security workshop. And that was the message from the Samsung that we have to have multi-layer protection to secure a DRAM. So it used to be done by DRAM, but Samsung expects some kind of handshake between DRAM and SoC controller. And one item that I can highlight is directed.fm. So we will have some kind of information that we can have or utilize from the SoC directly. And then I still think RFM, ARFM is very strong enough. But I remember David's presentation that maybe RFM enough or something. But as a supplier point of view, when we are restricted only to the DRAM, healthiness is very strong, but it has some cons to the system performance impact. So that kind of thing may need to be further discussed as well. So some future actions, it's actually going on in JEDEC, and I'm also chair of the data integrity TG in the JEDEC, that we are having some more level of protection, and some more of the uses will be updated sooner or later for some kind of some handshake based on solution. So that kind of thing will coming up, and that kind of thing should also focus on the second bullet. So what to monitor is about the max access in the bank or repetitive access pattern or the max access in TRAF, and that all kind of thing should be infiltrated to the solution, and then some collaboration or some harmonized corrective action should be followed. So that kind of thing that is I would like to highlight today. So a lot of details already covered from David and Dong-Kyun. So I would like to stop here and let's move on to the next one.
Great. So the owner, are you ready? Okay, so
Yes.
Great.
Just a second. Can you hear me?
Yep. Excellent.
Okay, I cannot share. Okay, now I can share, I think.
Yep.
I'll try to keep it short.
Yep. Great. Thank you.
Hopefully. Okay. Oh, my video is not. Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
so
I can see. I can hear.
Okay, great. Something is going on in my computer, but it's okay, hopefully. Okay, so let me quickly talk about the topic. Essentially, we're talking about PIM security, I think. I would like to cover this a little bit. Clearly, processing in memory is a large concept. You basically offload computation to a memory or storage device. And this could be close or far, or inside the processor chip or outside the processor chip. So there's a huge design space over here, which we're not going to talk about. But the good thing is this is becoming real in today's systems. There are general purpose as well as special purpose processing in memory systems, as well as prototypes. Some of them you can buy, some of them you cannot buy yet, or some of them you can simulate. And there are other things that you can imagine and simulate as well. Okay. I think I will also mention that there, in my opinion, there are only two different fundamental types of processing in memory. One is basically putting logic near memory, as it could be inside the DRAM chip, but it's actually logic that's different from DRAM. And the other is processing using memory, which is essentially exploiting the analog operational principles to do computation. And I think these are fundamentally different ways of doing computation. Processing near memory is relatively easily adoptable. And okay, I can talk more about this, but I'm not going to do that. So let's talk about some adoption issues. I think we're talking about security. I think security is an important adoption issue. We're not going to talk about the other ones, which are potentially affected by security, but I'll just mention this. So I think if we talk about security, we should probably be thinking about, can processing in memory worsen security, and can it enhance security? I think it could go either way, but we need to examine it essentially. Potentially, physical issues like row hammer or other noise issues can be worsened There could be worsened or new side channels. There could be hardware bugs depending on the design of these things, because remember, when you actually introduce a new hardware feature, errata grows based on that hardware feature, and processing in memory is not immune to that. I think PIM can also enhance security because it exposes less data on the interconnect, which could be good. You can do things like in-memory encryption, which could help confidential computation that David was discussing. You can execute security functions, trusted execution. You can actually have support for security primitives and a bunch of things. So I think an important thing to do going forward is to evaluate the security of PIM systems. But of course, it's a huge area, in my opinion, because there are different types of PIM, as we mentioned, processing near memory versus processing using memory, analog versus digital, and other things. There are different locations also, depending on where processing in memory is employed. The security implications will probably be different. And then there's general purpose versus special purpose processing in memory. And then there's the question of multi-tenancy versus single workload. Can you concurrently access processing in memory through accelerators and processing in memory and the host? And I think David mentioned this memory bus protection, which is also going to be increasingly important, in my opinion. And then robustness issues. Okay, I think I'll stop here, but this is an exciting area, in my opinion. I'm happy to discuss more.
Great. So Stefan, you have been waiting for a very long time. Please share your idea. Stefan, are you there? Yep, unmute. Stefan?
Sorry about that.
Yep.
Okay.
Now it works great.
Okay. Sorry about that. So thank you for letting me follow Onur. I was worried for a while, but the good thing is actually he is a great segue. So I want to talk about, again, I'm going to be very brief, and I want to pose this as a challenge. I want to talk about DRAM security. I want to talk about one challenge with DRAM security. I do want to mention that these ideas have been influenced by a whole bunch of my collaborators, some of which are actually on attending the workshop. So this is not, I don't want to claim this is my idea. But the challenge that I want to pose is that we need to design form of isolation for DRAM, and in particular coming from Microsoft, for which Azure is a big deal. I'm looking at this from a per virtual machine per VM forms of isolation, but you can have your favorite sort of security perimeter if you don't like VMs. But we need to.
Yeah. So are you sharing slides, or because I don't see anything.
Oh, you don't see anything? Okay. Sorry, I had no idea. Okay, let me try again.
Yes, it's coming. Yeah. Now I see your desktop, I guess.
Okay. Do you see my slides?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Great.
Anyway, you didn't miss much. I was on this slide. So I have only one slide here. So I want to talk about a timeline for per VM isolation. If you look at the cloud providers host virtual machines from multiple tenants, and they want to actually share hardware resources across these tenants. So for them, per VM isolation is super important. And if you look at what has happened over the past 30 years, we first, before 2000s, we actually, one of the things I want to say, sorry. One of the things I want to say is that everything I'm talking about here, it's on x86, hardware. So there's other types of hardware out there that offers forms of isolation that x86 doesn't. I'm ignoring those primarily because x86 is the most popular form of hardware in the cloud today. Now, before 2000s, per VM isolation was difficult because x86 hardware lacked support for virtualization, or at best, it had some support for virtualization, but this support was incomplete. Now, in the first decade of the 21st century, both hardware and operating systems introduced isolation abstractions designed for the CPU. We started having CPU pinning, where you can actually pin threads or processes to different CPUs. You now started to have forms of NUMA support that lets you actually provide some form of isolation for memory on primarily targeted at the multi-socketed machines. So we covered the CPU. Then in the next decade, we actually had additional forms of per VM isolation, like targeting the cache. So we have this cache allocation technology, or CAT. that gives you per VM isolation for caches. And then we have SRIOV for PCI devices. So now we can isolate NICs, GPUs, and storage. So if you look today in 2023, we have isolation support for CPUs, we have isolation support for caches, for NICs, for GPUs, for storage, but guess what's missing? We have no isolation support for DRAM. So the bottom line is that we actually have to sort of take a step back and I think isolation in DRAM is much needed to really sleep well at night with respect to security. So I want to end up with this, posing this grand challenge to both the research community, the academic community, and industry. It's time now to design per VM isolation mechanisms for DRAM. Thank you.
Great. So all the panelists share their thoughts. Someone long, someone short, but now it's time for the real fun. So I think the theme is basically really about the confidential or secure computing and what is the impact of that, especially if there's some processing near memory or processing under memory, as Onur mentioned. So first, for the participants audience, if you have any questions, just bring it up, and then the panelist is happy to answer. Before there's some question from the panel from the audience, we can just start from the last theme that Stefan mentioned. So, do you think that the isolation in DRAM, is there any? Did you assume any of the processing on the memory processing kind of using memory feature there, or that you're totally kind of orthogonal?
So I was thinking about DRAM security, and I just sort of, I wanted to talk about what I think, and I want to present a challenge that's not specific to Rowhammer, and I think this is a challenge that's at the top of my head. Answering your question with respect to processing in memory, I think there is an opportunity to actually design forms of DRAM isolation by leveraging PIM. I'm not, I do understand PIM, but I'm not really an expert on PIM. So I think people like Onur and other people on the call actually understand PIM deeper than I do, and maybe there is some opportunity there. But yes, it's very scary to think that a lot of the computation that we, meaning the society, uses today is in the cloud. And again, I know I'm coming from Microsoft, and you might think, and you think I'm blaming, and maybe I am, but we actually use cloud for computation, whereas Amazon or Google's or other parties fine. And everybody's really keen on providing strong forms of isolation. But guess what? In DRAM, everybody's near everybody else. DRAM does a great job of interleaving everyone everywhere. So we sort of say, yeah, in DRAM, everything is fine. We're just going to ignore that. And that's actually, I think, very scary. And if there is a way to actually leverage PIM to provide that much needed isolation, I think that's an interesting avenue to pursue.
I would add
any of the panel. Yeah, go ahead, please. David.
Yeah, I would add that technologies like trust domain extensions is a step in that direction. It's not perfect, but it does provide a much better level of isolation in DRAM than we have today.
I agree.
But it does assume also that you have good Rowhammer protection, right? Because you don't know where this memory is, right? You may be right next to some other memory that somebody's hammering. But yeah.
So Onur or anyone else want to jump in?
I mean, I definitely agree. I think isolation is really important for security, as well as the success of PIM. So PIM can help isolation, and I think PIM also needs isolation to work, let's say, securely. So no question about that. And I think I definitely agree with Stefan. This is really important going into the future. There's certainly work done in this area in terms of like capacity isolation, performance isolation, and timing isolation, all of these things. But I think we do need to enable systems to be partitionable across the entire, let's say, hardware stack, if you will, in terms of all of those metrics.
Yeah, probably some opportunities there with CXL to partition memory much more clearly. I mean, the reason it's not well partitioned today is because of performance, and you have interleaving, and you have for performance reasons. So it makes it very difficult to really partition But with CXL, maybe there's an opportunity. I mean, I'm just brainstorming, but and I don't know a ton about our CXL plans, but it might open up an opportunity to solve that problem.
So speaking of the CXL, do you think that the CXL is a bless or a curse in terms of the which one security and related to DRAM? Stefan, you have thoughts?
So I think CXL would greatly expand the life of DDR4.
Does it mean that because of the, for example, the limitation in the ROHAMmer related features, does it mean more headache to the people?
Right. So I guess what I'm saying is, if we do not adopt CXL, DDR4 is gonna be replaced by DDR5 sooner than if we adopt CXL. We meaning if CXL seeing meaning the industry, if CXL sees adoption, that will prolong the life of DDR4. And DDR4 has all the problems that it has, and they're in the field. So we're not gonna nobody's gonna fix ROHAMmer problems into existing DIMMs that are out there.
Okay.
Okay.
TK or Dong-Kyun, can you
yeah,
share
so-
some of your thoughts?
Yes. So the CXL with the DDR4, I think it is the reasonable way to guarantee the security and reliability. Yes, with the kind of the additional kind of feature of the controller. So I'm thinking about that kind of the additional feature on controller to guarantee the reliability and the security.
Sure, fine. That'll be fair enough. So I think there's an opportunity. So there's an opportunity with CXL that we have now. We will bring new memory controllers that can come in with stronger security protections than the current memory controllers. Fair enough. And that way, maybe we can actually mitigate these problems.
Okay.
Also, another question to the SOC is that not only the ROHAMmer the detection, but also other possible kind of the detection or exploits of DRAM and system. What do you think about the security improvement of security? So we need to add more the kind of metadata on the memory to make sure the security improvement is it needed to the large kind of metadata to that?
Maybe David is the right person to answer. What is the right collaboration between CPU and memory?
Yeah, I'm not sure I really completely followed your question there. So what you're asking about? Actually, can you just repeat? I didn't catch the question.
If I understand correct, for example, the RFM or others, DRAM is willing to provide some information back to CPU to help improve the security. Or is the not just for the ROHAMmer, but the other type of the kind of security improvement?
Okay.
Right?
Well, I think there has to be some cooperation, definitely, but I think it needs to be simplistic, as simple as possible. We have looked at different schemes in the past that required a lot of complicated interaction between DRAM and CPU or memory controller. But why? I mean, yeah, I think we can keep it simple, and the more you keep it simple, the better it is. Like if we have row tracking, activate tracking per row, we're going to need a little bit of communication between the CPU and the memory, but it needs to be just kind of an alert or something like that. When the DRAM needs more time, you need to let the CPU know to stop. But if you start to get into complex schemes, I think it just opens up security issues. It opens up bugs. It opens up all kinds of problems. So I personally think it should be as simple as possible.
Great. So there's a question from the audience, from Lucian. So to the panel, we had the question is that we have adopted already some reliability features such as, RFM. Can we add changes to these reliability features to make them more virtual machine aware? For example, different thresholds per security domain and things like that. Are the memory vendors supported of these type of ideas? I think it's an interesting question. And some of the panelists try to answer this part.
Yeah, so now we are considering that to support that with the collaborating between the DRAM and SoC. So DRAM can consider to track the kind of the attraction. Almost we can detect the malicious attack of the exploit the DRAM low activation. So in the case, DRAM can, I think if we establish some kind of scheme, then it can detect the malicious attack. But after that, the SoC can help the DRAM to mitigate that. But one of things the cons on that scheme is that if we count the activation of every row address, then the counter reset is very important when the victim address is mitigated. So, but the scheme is very important, but it is not work. If it is not work, then every address of activation is accumulated in the counter. So in that case, we have to mitigate all of address, even though it is not the malicious attack. That is even that is just only the normal operation. So that is pros things. So we have to prevent that kind of situation. But in the case, we worrying about the system performance drop. So it is really detailed, but so that's why we think the kind of the handshaking from between the DRAM and SoC. Then we have to get we can get the improvement of the low hammer detection response, I think. Yeah.
And let me have one more comment. So right
Cool.
now we're already having adaptive RFM, which is having some kind of capability to override what a DRAM vendor manifested. So if there are a certain level of threshold right now when we ship out the product, and there's a way to override current threshold. So there is already some way that we can override. Maybe we can utilize as a VM aware of kind of functionality, but it will have some cost if, when we try to enable it. So more conservative threshold means like more performance drop. So it should be turned on by the, maybe I'll say, application discretion kind of thing is needed to do so. But there is a way to override current setting already.
I think the challenge is to do it in a dynamic way. I mean, adaptive RFM, definitely helps, but it's kind of something you have to do in advance, right? It's typically, I mean, you could probably come up with a scheme to do it dynamically, but it's not intended to be used that way currently.
That's correct.
I think, the challenge is, that I'm hearing here is that it's like somehow the CPU knows that there's a row hammer attack occurring. Well, that's not the case. I mean, the CPU, there's many different types of workloads. We've done quite a bit of work. We did quite a large project a year or two ago looking at row hammer detection. And it's quite a difficult problem to solve. And even when we got where we were thinking we were pretty good at it, you could just go tweak your row hammer attack and not detect it. So it's a very difficult problem to solve, detecting row hammer. So it's not like the CPU is this all-knowing thing that knows when a row hammer attack is occurring and can just tell the DRAM. So, that doesn't exist.
There will be, just to add more to David, I suspect there will be additional CPUs that will come up that will have stronger row hammer protection, that actually the CPU could in fact detect there is, or suspect, not detect, but suspect there is an ongoing attack. And maybe even
Suspecting
going
easy,
to,
yeah.
yeah.
And then you get performance impact, right? So yeah, you're trading off a lot of false detects from, right?
Well, it's tricky. Yeah, it's just, sort of how important is security. I do want to follow up a little bit on Lucian's question to kind of understanding a little bit. Lucian, and maybe he can actually answer this or add color to this, which is the only place in this whole hardware software hierarchy, the only place in this hardware software stack in which that can tie DRAM isolation reliability issues to VMs is the chip, right? The SoC, the memory controller. So it seems like that's the only place. Like the DRAM doesn't know which VM is being. It's where is this data coming from, and the VMs have no idea which actually RAS features where they don't know anything about channels and ranks and banks and none of that. So it seems to me like he's asking about an Intel feature. Lucian, so am I right in my understanding?
No, I do agree totally that you need support for the SoC to achieve this. However, I had also another example in mind. For example, in the Panopticon paper, we had a single queue, the mitigation queue. And what if we manage to make that queue, let's say, a priority queue, and depending from where the DRAM access comes from, for let's say from a more security sensitive or a less security sensitive domain, then we can prioritize that. So that was
I see.
one of the things. But I can't comment about specific, I know, CPU or feature. But the overall goal is that yeah, you need collaborations on both parts.
So going back to Dong-Kyun's question on metadata. Maybe the metadata bits could actually indicate what VM is actually using that cache line. And then the DRAM can interpret those metadata bits to do something like a priority queue or something else.
Yeah. So among the material of today's presentation, some person mentioned the sideband information about this. So we can get, I think, the chance to the handshaking with the using that sideband kind of things for the future devices, DRAM devices. I think that is good kind of the idea. I think so. I think I'd like to ask another things for the security improvement about this might be needed the encryption of data on the DRAM or not. Encryption kind of stuff.
Yeah, encryption is definitely important. I think if you're talking about confidential compute applications, then yeah, encryption is a key part of that.
Maybe the question is that if you do the encryption within DRAM, maybe it has some
Within DRAM
implication in
systems.
performance.
How do you think about it? Within DRAM, we need to encrypt kind of schemes inside of DRAM, you think?
I think depends on what you want to enable, right? If you want to enable security critical applications to execute on the DRAM side, I would say that absolutely yes. And also some throughput improvements can be gained by workloads that require significant encryption, decryption, and with potentially network processing. So I think yeah, it depends in the end.
Okay.
In my opinion, but there needs to be more research, I believe, in this direction also, right? I think if we want to enhance system security in general, maybe enabling DRAM to do more will help system security. And if you actually do the sort of encryption on the DRAM side, you can protect the memory bus in a better way too.
Thank you.
So we are already 5 minutes kind of behind the schedule. So Onur, you are the only panelist for in the academia, not in the, and others are typically in the JEDEC. As a professor or the academia person, do you have some requests or questions kind of to the industry with regard to the process, kind of row hammer or the security in general for the DRAM?
I was hoping I wouldn't talk about Rowhammer, but
Yeah, just say something. Yeah, this is one of the few chances the kind of industry and the academia can talk each other, even though there should be some limitation.
I'm
Yeah,
okay. Actually, I'm okay with you having a plug on your upcoming paper. Actually, I think it's the right audience for that. So.
Oh, okay. Is that what you prefer? Okay. No, I think David already gave that plug to our paper, but I think we need to. I mean, as David also mentioned, we need to more seriously look into these issues because any bit flip is exploitable. And I think David's keynote was very interesting to me. I mean, I knew some of the history over here, but one of the interesting thing is maybe the approach. Maybe we need to talk more between academia and industry, because these bit flips, people have shown that these bit flips are exploitable long before Rowhammer, right? If you look at the 2003 IEEE and security paper from Andrew Apple, they basically induced bit flips in memory using a lamp by heating the memory, and showed that you could escape a sandbox. Even before that, Dan Bonnet from Stanford has papers from 1990, 1996, 1997, where they showed that actually if you have hardware faults, your encryption schemes are all broken, essentially. So I think Rowhammer did not have to be this way. Let me put it that way. But going forward, how do we fix it? I mean, it's in my opinion, I mean, we're all open in academia and we would like to definitely collaborate, but there are some places that are harder for us to collaborate with, right? So we'd be happy to contribute to JEDEC, for example, but there are some rules in JEDEC that are completely against academic principles. I don't know how to bridge that gap. Let me put it that way. And I think people in JEDEC know those rules. I'll stop here. Maybe I'll put a plug on our RoPress paper. Yeah, if you're interested in more read disturbance issues, please come on Monday to our RoPress presentation. It'll be on YouTube also.
Okay, great. So unfortunately, I think it's time to wrap up. So thank you again for your presence and active participation, or David, Dong-Kyun, TK, Onur, and Stefan. It has been really kind of intriguing. So thank you.